The easiest way to diminish a black woman on stage is not to tell her she cannot sing. It is to tell her to sing less. Less loud. Less long. Less free. Less of the part that makes the room remember she was ever there. Rapid in production language. Call it pacing. Call it balance. Call it show flow. Call it audience management. Anything but what it is. Because some people can tolerate black talent beautifully as long as it stays decorative. Zariah Cole had learned that lesson long before the white producer tried to cut her solo 30 seconds before the lights came up. Before we get into it, tell me where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy stories about dignity, exposure, and moments when a crowd forces the truth into the open, subscribe and stay with me. The show was called Riverlight Live, a nationally broadcast concert special filmed once a year on the Waterfront Pavilion downtown. It was half music event, half industry ritual, the kind of glossy televised production where sponsors bought atmosphere, labels bought visibility, and performers were expected to make the whole machine look effortless while 30 people in headsets quietly panicked behind the curtain. There were LED walls the size of houses. A stage rig built over the river. 3 host cameras. 2 crane arms. Pyro cues. Wardrobe racks. Publicists. Managers. Label reps. And enough cables backstage to trip a horse. Zariah Cole was not the headliner. That mattered. Because if she had been the headliner, nobody would have dared touch her arrangement. If she had been a nobody, they wouldn't have cared enough to interfere. But she occupied the most dangerous category in show business, too gifted to ignore, not yet too powerful to control. She was 29, black, and the kind of singer whose voice made people stop pretending to multitask. Not a gimmick singer. Not a social media belter. A real one. Church-bred control, jazz-trained phrasing, and the kind of emotional force that made weak material sound better than it deserved. For 2 years her name had been circling the industry in that annoying, flattering, delaying way people use when they want to seem ahead of success without committing any resources to it. One executive called her inevitable. Another called her a major voice if the team stays disciplined. A producer in Los Angeles told her manager, she's incredible, but she needs the right lane. The right lane. Which usually meant, we love what she does, we just want it with less ownership. Tonight she was booked to perform alongside pop star Celine Voss in a tribute medley honoring women in soul music. On paper, it sounded generous. 2 artists. Shared stage. Big audience. Legacy arrangement. In reality, everybody backstage knew what the segment really was, a brand extension for Celine, with Zariah brought in to add credibility, texture, and the kind of live authority pop productions rent when they don't grow enough of it naturally. Celine was white, platinum blonde, wildly marketable, and genuinely good at what she did. Not untalented. That would have made things simpler. But she belonged to that elite category of artists protected by image infrastructure so strong it could survive almost any artistic shortcut. She was the star. The label favorite. The sponsor darling. The one whose face appeared on the promo banners outside the venue even though 3 women were technically on the bill. Zariah knew all that when she said yes to the performance. She also knew the arrangement featured a 64-bar solo section in the middle of the final song. Her section. Not improvised the night before. Not something she stole in rehearsal. Built into the arrangement. Approved in music prep. Timed to the cue sheet. Lit for the center stage circle. She had the emails. Her musical director had the marked charts. Everybody on the band knew exactly where it lived. Which was why, at 7:42 p.m., 18 minutes before live broadcast, it was interesting that producer Grant Hollowell suddenly wanted to talk. Grant was white, 50-ish, expensive haircut, black show blacks that somehow still looked like executive wear, and the particular kind of TV producer who believed the whole building pulsed because of his instincts. He had one of those voices that always sounded like he was generously saving time by speaking to you at all. He loved pacing, optics, audience retention curves, and telling artists what America needed from them as if Nielsen data had appointed him a cultural philosopher. He found Zariah near wardrobe touch-up while a stylist fixed one loose curl near her temple. "Need a quick adjustment," he said. Zariah looked at him in the mirror. "What kind of adjustment?" Grant smiled like the answer should already have made her grateful. "We're tightening the tribute medley. You'll go from the second refrain straight into the final chorus with Celine." Zariah turned in her chair. "No. Grant's smile stayed in place. That made him more dangerous, not less. It's just a trim. No, she repeated. That cuts my solo. He lifted a hand lightly, as if to settle a child who had confused preference with structure. We need momentum. The room responds better when we keep the visual focus moving. There it was. Not musical language. Not even producer language. Visual focus. Zerai asked, meaning what? Grant shrugged. Meaning this is television. A few feet away, her musical director stopped pretending to check a chart. One of the backup vocalists went very still. The stylist removed her hand from Zerai's hair and quietly stepped away like someone sensing the temperature in a room had just become expensive. Zerai stood. Slowly. Gracefully. Dangerously calm. That solo is in the arrangement. Grant nodded. It was. Was. He said it like the whole thing belonged to him because the camera plan did. Zerai stared at him. You changed the arrangement 18 minutes before show. We refined the segment. No, she said. You cut me out of it. Grant exhaled through his nose, still smiling, and dropped into that smoother, more insulting register powerful white men use when they want black women to hear control as reason. Zerai, nobody's cutting you out. We're just protecting the shape of the number. Her band leader, Marcus Bell, stepped closer now. Grant, the tracks are built for the solo break. Grant didn't even look at him. Then the band can vamp shorter. Marcus's mouth tightened. He knew better than to argue too hard with television people 5 minutes before live cues. That was part of the system too. Everybody knew where the punishments lived. Zerai said, this is not what we rehearsed. Grant's smile thinned. Then adapt. There it was. The corporate art of theft. Take the work, alter the moment, and then call any objection inflexibility. The headliner's performance coach, a white woman in a headset and white sneakers, appeared beside the production table just in time to hear enough of it to understand the shape of the thing. What's going on? She asked. Grant answered first. Minor trim. We're keeping the segment cleaner. Cleaner. Zerai almost laughed. That word had done so much violence in so many nice rooms. Cleaner usually meant less black. Less raw. Less ownership. Less of whatever made the performance stop serving the package and start revealing itself as art. She looked directly at Grant. You were cutting the strongest part of the song. He gave her a shrug soaked in false patience. That's subjective. Marcus said, flatly, no, it isn't. Grant ignored him too. Then came the line. The one that told the truth he had been dressing up. We can't have the whole segment tipping into a church revival in the middle of a sponsor hour. Silence. Not backstage silence. Moral silence. The kind where everybody in earshot knows something ugly has just shown its face and is now waiting to see whether the room will pretend not to recognize it. Zerai's expression did not change. That was the scariest part. Because if she had yelled, he could have made it about temperament. If she cried, he could have made it about pressure. If she folded, he could have made it about professionalism. Instead she just asked, did you really just say that to me? Grant's own confidence flickered for the first time. Don't twist what I mean. I don't have to, she said. You said it in full. The performance coach stepped back. The backup vocalist looked away. A camera assistant carrying batteries stopped moving altogether for one impossible second before continuing like survival required it. Grant checked his watch. We're done here. The cut stands. And then he walked off. Just like that. Like power had ended the conversation simply by choosing motion. Zerai stood there in the corridor of noise and costume racks and stage sweat while the machine of live television moved around her, assuming she would do what artists without institutional cover are expected to do. Take the humiliation. Hit the mark. Smile under the lights. Be grateful you were booked at all. Her manager, Rochelle, arrived 30 seconds later and took one look at her face. What happened? Marcus answered before Zerai could. Grant cut the solo. Rochelle turned. What? He says it hurts Flo, Marcus said. Translation, he got scared she'd own the room. Rochelle swore under her breath and stormed toward production, but Zerai caught her arm. No. Rochelle stopped. No. Zariah looked toward the stage entrance where the blue light from the LED wall flickered through the curtain. No public begging. No hallway screaming. Not for them. Then she smiled a little. A dangerous smile. But he's not getting what he wants either. The segment began at 8:03. The crowd out front was huge, packed shoulder to shoulder under river wind and stage light, loud enough to make backstage floors hum. Tens of thousands in person. Hundreds of thousands more watching the broadcast. The hosts did their setup. Celine came out first in silver. The applause rolled. The medley opened. Everything looked perfect. That was always the joke. Perfect from the front. A struggle for ownership under the stage stairs. Zariah entered on cue at the second verse in dark gold silk that caught every light and gave it back warmer. The crowd reacted instantly, louder than Grant probably wanted and not yet loud enough to warn him what was coming. She sang the harmony entrance exactly as arranged. Then the bridge. Then the build into the handoff. Her voice was glorious. Not louder than the song. Truer than it. Celine did her part well. Very well, actually. But there was a difference between singing a moment and inhabiting it, and the audience could feel the difference even if they couldn't name it. Then came the place where the cut was supposed to happen. The band knew. Zariah knew. Marcus knew. Grant, somewhere behind the monitor wall, almost certainly had his little stopwatch of control out in his head. The song reached the turn. Celine moved towards center for the chorus pickup. The camera crane swung. The lighting changed. And the crowd, who had never once seen the cue sheet, never met Grant Hollowell, and knew absolutely nothing about backstage racial politics, did something nobody in production had planned. They started chanting her name. First a pocket near the front barricade. Then a second section. Then the lawn. Then the lower bowl. Zariah. 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 It swelled in under 4 seconds into the kind of public demand producers hate because it reminds them that audiences are not as programmable as sponsors wish. Celine heard it. You could see it in her face. And to her everlasting credit, she did not fight it. She turned toward Zariah. Actually turned. Stepped back half a pace. And gave her the center. That was all the permission the band needed. Marcus lifted his hand. The players hit the brake. And Zariah took the solo. Not because she stole it. Because the room called it back. She sang like a woman who had been told to become smaller an hour earlier and had decided, under television lights, to let the truth travel at full volume instead. The first note landed and the whole riverfront changed. People screamed. Phones went up. The camera director, probably cursing in 3 different internal channels, had no choice but to stay on her because to cut away would have looked insane to everyone with eyes. Zariah did no versing. That was the beauty of it. She didn't thrash or showboat or turn the moment into revenge. She simply opened the song wide enough for everyone there to realize how starved it had been without her. The solo climbed. Turned. Bent around a blue note so clean the crowd made that involuntary sound humans make when art gets too close too fast. Then she drove it home on one final run that left even the backup singers grinning in spite of whatever backstage politics they had been trying to survive. By the time the chorus returned, the whole audience was on its feet. Grant Hollowell, somewhere offstage, was likely dying in immaculate silence. The performance ended in chaos. Good chaos. The kind careers are built on. Celine hugged her on camera. The host came out visibly rattled in the best way. Social media clips were up before the stage cleared. And backstage? Backstage was even better. Because backstage was where the machine had to explain itself after the crowd chose a side. Grant was waiting near the monitor bank with 2 associate producers and the look of a man trying very hard to decide whether anger or denial would save more face. You ignored a direct production note, he said as soon as she came off stage. Zariah was still breathing hard, still glowing with adrenaline, still hearing the chant in her bones. No, she said. The audience overruled it. He stared at her. That is not how live production works. From behind him came another voice. Yes, said Celine Voss, stepping in with her mic pack still clipped at the back, it kind of is. Everybody turned. Grant blinked. Celine, she cut him off. Interesting how quick the room changed when the white headliner decided truth was no longer too expensive. They chanted her name, Celine said. You wanted me to step on that? Grant tried the old language again. We had a timing structure, Celine laughed once. Then fix your timing structure. Rochelle, who had arrived just in time to enjoy this, folded her arms and did not even try to hide it. Grant looked at Zariah like maybe he could still frame her as unmanageable if he stayed on message. You put the segment at risk. Zariah met his gaze. No, she said. You did that when you tried to cut the best voice in the number because it made you nervous. That line hit the room and stayed there. Not just because it was true. Because everybody standing within earshot already knew it was true and had been waiting to see whether anyone powerful enough would say so aloud. Then one of the associate producers made the fatal mistake of glancing at the monitor where the live audience feed was still rolling. The chant clip had already been replayed on the internal social stream. Za-ri-ah. 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 There was no version of the night now where Grant got to call this a discipline problem. Not with the audience on video. Not with the headliner having yielded center. Not with a performance already detonating online in real time. He went quiet. The sort of quiet men like him fall into when the room has taken their side away. By midnight, the solo clip had millions of views. By morning, 3 labels who had treated Zariah like a maybe were suddenly calling Rochelle with urgency usually reserved for mistakes they wanted to retroactively call strategy. By the next afternoon, the narrative had escaped the building entirely. Not Grant's version. The real one. Producer tried to cut the singer's solo. Crowd chanted her back in. She shut the whole place down. Nobody had to mention race for people to feel its shape. Everybody in the industry knew it anyway. They always do. A week later, Riverlight's executive producer offered Zariah a solo broadcast special. Interesting. How quickly institutions rediscover your value once the public makes erasure impossible. She took the meeting. Of course she did. Justice is nice. Leverage is better. As for Grant Hollowell, he did not get publicly fired. Men like Grant rarely do. They get shifted. Reassigned. Moved toward internal development. The industry's favorite words for take him out of the room before he embarrasses the brand again. The version most people would tell was simple. A white producer tried to cut the black singer's solo. The crowd started chanting her name. She sang anyway. But the truer version was this: a black woman walked into a major stage carrying the strongest voice in the segment. A white producer tried to shrink that voice into background texture because too much ownership from the wrong woman inside the wrong sponsor hour felt dangerous to him. He called it flow. He called it balance. He called it production. And then the crowd heard what he was trying to take from them and called her back with their own mouths before anyone backstage could rewrite the moment. That is what prejudice often looks like in entertainment. Not always refusal. Sometimes just reduction. A cut here. A trim there. A polite attempt to make a black woman's brilliance smaller before it becomes the thing everybody remembers most. Until the audience starts chanting. And then suddenly the solo they tried to erase becomes the entire night. If this story moved you, like the video, subscribe, and stay close. There are more stories like this one waiting.